much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today to discussing a very important topic that's very close to many of our hearts. We've had pre-calls with all the panelists, and I think this is there's much excitement about what the discussion will entail today. I don't need to really delve into the issues when we are thinking about women at the center of development and design, but let me just articulate a few facts here just to get the conversation started. I think we're all aware that women and girls lack agency in many contexts around the world, and the issues related to gender inequality, we find it particularly pressing in the Indian context. India has one of the lowest female labor force participation rates in the world, and particularly when we look at the burden of unpaid domestic care, we feel that it falls disproportionately on the shoulders of women. Recent estimates from the World Economic Forum suggest that as high as 66% of women's work in India is unpaid, relative to 12% of men's work. I mean, this is a startling fact. I think just hold that thought. There are many more statistics coming. Gender norms, if you thinking about historically gender norms or informal rules that impose behavioral expectations based on gender are a significant barrier to women's empowerment as well. Again, I'll just quote a quick statistics from the recent NFHS 2021 round. Over 30% of women from 14 states and UTs reported believing that domestic violence against women was justified under certain circumstances. Quite shocking. And we now have research from the work that we've done at the Poverty Action Lab that suggests that gender norms can block the impact of programs that seek to benefit women. And this is important as we're thinking about women at the center of development design. So I'm not going to talk a little bit more, give you more statistics, but there are a few programs I think that we want to discuss today and some of the challenges as well facing us. And we're thinking about what are the solutions for this, what are the barriers, what are the challenges, what are the solutions. There are enough evidence now around gender norms as well in terms of what works and what can impact behaviors and patterns in the future. So I'll try and weave in some of the JPAL evidence into the discussions as we go forward. But that aside, in today's discussion, we want to touch upon some key challenges to women's empowerment, and we want to delve into innovative women-centric models in development to address some of these challenges. So we have a fantastic panel. It's a really power-packed panel that we have today with years of experience across different dimensions. Gender is cross-cutting. We have panelists who have, working in agriculture, water, technology, development, impact measurement spaces, among other things. So we will discuss some of these issues today and how we can work together to bring about institutional change to enhance gender equality. So with that, I'm going to move to a bunch of questions that I have for the panelists. So the first question I'm going to ask everyone to answer, and then we'll sort of, time is short, so we'll be targeting a few questions to each one of you depending upon your expertise area. So 5 minutes, we can start with Rajeshri, but this is the same question that we have for everyone. What are some of the key challenges related to gender inequality that you believe are very important to address today? And can you talk about some models of work that you have encountered where women-centric design and development has successfully addressed some of these challenges? And Rajeshri, feel free to talk about your work or the work that you are doing currently, or more broadly about some of the work that you might have encountered in this space.
Thanks a lot. I think, so before getting started with my work, let me start that some of the genesis with which we started. We didn't start with the gender lens to start with. Okay, we started with, like many others, that we'll focus on education and healthcare, and these are the very foundational elements for any societal growth. Okay, so then we later included livelihood and skilling, and somewhere in the 2018, on all these programs, we did have a focus on women. Okay, it was deep buried in that sense. It was not a special lens for gender until then. The 2018, we all know that there is this, the parity of, the women equality, the report from the McKinsey that it came, the power of parity. That was a time that we were kind of, every 3 years, 5 years, we were revising our strategy, re-looking at it. So the power of parity report made a case from the McKinsey report, so to say that if the Asian economies actually can ensure that the women comes to workforce, overall it will boost the GDP by 12%, and particularly for India, it is 18%. And so it's like women coming to workforce, and that was primarily, we were looking at how we can bring women to more productive career. It's not that women are not doing productive work, high productive work, but not helping them financially being self-reliant. That is the case, right? So when women need to be more productive financially and they're more self-reliant, then it's not just a moral responsibility or it's not just a social perspective, it's not a moral perspective. There is actually a business perspective for getting women to increase in boosting their GDP. So that was a case that was laid by McKinsey. In fact, the same report goes on to say that like how the women at the various levels is kind of coming down, all the way up to the board across the countries. Of course, in India, it is a little skewed because we have a mandate for women to be in the board, at least for the namesake. But then across all the levels, starting from access to education at all levels, that how women are getting missed out. And then fast forward to 2020, you take the COVID impact. Many reports, it talked about how it became even more difficult for women, particularly women getting them back into the labor. It was, I think at the end of 2020 or something, we were 26% drop from the 2005 figure, the women working in the workforce. So you'll have to look at it, if you have to look at it, across, the different, take gender as a lens. Now, if our recent strategy is that we're not looking at education, healthcare, and livelihood separately. We look at inclusion as a first lens, the gender and then the person with the disability. Why? Because you can't partition it across sectors. First, if women need to be coming out to work, they need to be healthy. So you need to focus all the way from the adolescent girls' health, the young girls' health, and as well as the women health. And of course, unless you have a healthy mother, you can't have a healthy baby. So it's also good for the society, it's not just for the women. Okay, so starting from the health perspective. Then coming into the education and the skilling, we look at it now that how education and skilling can bring that equity in the society. How we can make the society more inclusive, through education and skilling. So of course, we do a lot of programs, both in the skilling as well as in the education. Some of them, at least in the education space, particularly the school education, inclusion doesn't mean exclusion. Of course, it's the children, we look at it, children as a whole. But when it comes to higher education, particularly we have a special focus on women. Why? Because when any of these kind of disruptions, the COVID and other things, any economic disruption that happens, the first impact is actually on the women. We now, education, we used to have healthy debates in our organization saying that, everybody is able to take loan and do the higher education. Why are we supporting women? But how many of women are, the loans are available, but how many of them are able to come forward and take the loan? Because there are societal compulsions on spending on women's higher education. You take skilling again, right? Of course, we do a program which is like how we can promote women into the tech-enabled career. But when we say tech, it's not a pure tech. It's not just IT jobs per se. Are we actually empowering these women for a digital world? So that's what we're looking at. So anything that we do, that whether it is an education or a livelihood or in the health, now it is with the two lens. One is it helping the persons with disability? First of all, in the health, is it preventing the disability in the first place? Is it promoting a good health for women on the health side? And in the education and skilling, that are we building an inclusive society through education and skilling? Even we had a major flood in 2005 in Tamil Nadu. And there were a lot of money, special funding coming for, programs for rebuilding the resilience in the community. And we looked at several opportunities and several projects. But finally, what actually we could select, and which was very convincing, and thankfully we selected that, was through self-help groups, providing revolving fund for the women. In fact, most of the money came back, again, for the community, because the women repaid the loans extremely well, even though they were actually pushing themselves out of the disaster. They repaid it extremely well. I know that money is still floating and to have very sustainable interventions in that community. So with women in the center of the, at the gender lens, actually the programs are far more reaching and the impact is much better. So with that, I will stop.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajeshri.
Sorry, will you just help me with the question
Sure.
once again?
I'll just repeat the question once again. It's fairly straightforward. So what are some of the key challenges related to gender inequality that you believe are most important to address today? Can you talk about some models of work that you've encountered where women-centric design in development has successfully addressed some of these key challenges or gaps?
Sure. Thank you. It's lovely to be here. And I see if I look around the room, sorry. Sorry, can you hear me? That's clear? Yeah. Yeah? Is this okay? Yeah. So if I look around the room and we're talking about gender and I see equal number of men and women, so that actually is very encouraging. That means men are interested in this conversation and they are the pillar of strength out here. But, and I think you spoke about what are the key challenges, and I think that's where I will come to. That one, the acceptance of the fact that is gender an issue. We all talk about it, but really how much every organization, every industry, how much are we believing in that, and do women believe in that? So I do feel that if you really look at a country like India, the biggest challenge is our mindset, which comes from the patriarchal way of thinking. And that's why I said it's great to have men sitting in this room, because I think I read a World Economic Forum report which said that it will take us 268 years to actually bridge that gender gap. So that means that if we start working today, we have to wait for nearly 3 centuries to bridge that gap. And and I think if that's the world stats, India must be probably 400, not 268. So I think the challenge is more in terms of acceptance. The challenge is more in terms of what is available for women to actually learn, built into the daily thing, and what is a support system. So going back to it is when, let's see, last 2 years, we all have stats to say that how many girls dropped out when it came to COVID. I have seen in my environment when the boys were allowed to study, where the girl was not allowed to study. So I think that is where it comes. The first challenge is acceptance. The first challenge is accepting the fact that girls need to study. Second is, I think, from an employment point of view, the gender, the pay parity thing. Women themselves believe that, okay, it's okay to be paid a little less than the men. The belief in, we do a lot of work in NASCOM Foundation on STEM and skilling. And the hesitance in girls to say that, can I get a tech-related job? Or maybe I should go for humanities or a safer stream. It's not like they don't have the capability. So again, there is a major challenge out there. And while, yes, the government is trying, everybody's trying, but I think we need much more investment out there. We need much more hand-holding support when it comes to supporting women and to build that gender gap. And if you really look at a more systematic or a organized industry, then we need more role models. A lot of women drop out at a senior level because there are not too many role models. And if we have more role models, they will also believe that they can do it. So right from a rural area when a girl is born to maybe a CEO of a big company, we need change everywhere, and we need more support there. But if I really talk about, what in my experience, how we at least, and NASCOM Foundation we are trying to do is, we work in the area of entrepreneurship. But actually we decided to focus on women entrepreneurs, because we say only 13.7% women in India are women entrepreneurs. So we said if we make a design which is very general for entrepreneurs, we all think, yeah, every program design, every technology actually keep men as a center point. But if we keep women as a center point and we focus only on what women need. And also this particular program that we are running approximately in 6 states, reaching out to more than 20,000 women, it's basically centered around women, the need of a woman. How do we support a woman? How do we make a woman entrepreneur more successful, scalable? And also, which means that when we will support a woman entrepreneur, we're also making sure that she will further employ more women. And in terms of the product, in terms of delivery, in terms of efficiency, every training is around the needs, the shortcomings, the challenges, everything around a woman. So I would just say that, yes, whether it's a digital literacy program or it's an education program or health, if we keep women as a centric point, and I'm not saying that other genders don't need that focus, but if you're focusing on women, if we understand the need, the most common example is, I think everybody knows that, seat belts are made for men as a center point, and that's why the risk of 47, more than 40, I think it's 74% higher risk for a woman to die in a crash than a man, because it's been designed from a man-centric thing. So everything that we do, I mean from education to health to everything, if it's woman-centric, I think the success would be more, and it would be more inclusive.
Thank you, Nidhi. That's that I'm a mother of a 9-year-old daughter, and I keep thinking about the 268 years to bridge the gap. I don't know what I'm going to tell her. Anurag, yeah. Over to you, Anurag.
No, I don't think so. Imagine I am the only one sitting here. Huh? So it says women at the center of development. I'm like, Anurag at the center of development, man. You have so many powerful women sitting there in the dais, and they are saying that 268 years. I'm saying it has already happened. Nidhi, you said 50% men. I don't see 50% men sitting in this particular room. You have more females sitting in this particular room. This is the state of social development space in India today. You have more women there, and they are impacting the discourse, discussion, models and modules that's happening there. There are certain challenges there, and I completely agree too. One is that we're still looking from, I'll say, the lens of a man to decide the program design. We are still looking from the lens of, I'll say, directors who are there in our board to take a call on whether this particular project requires the funding or not. But the moment you hand it over to women colleagues to decide what is good for them, I guess they are competent, they are skilled, and they know their stuff. And there can't be a better place than this particular stage to say this, because look at this. In not a single argument that you'll find that they are lesser than Anurag's argument. They'll be far, far better than Anurag's argument there. They'll have much more clarity on the kind of project that they are doing. What they require is, and I'm just using you as an example there. I think this was much more clearer there. That was much more clearer there. Yeah. This is like, in our place, it's like puja hai, Saraswati puja, so like, this is far, far better. So, there are, I'll say, systems and institutions which are creating challenges there for a woman to exercise the kind of aspiration and dreams that they are having. But I guess we have moved out from the stage when people were questioning the ability of a woman to take that particular call. I remember when I started this particular journey of social development, putting gender in the project design was a tough challenge there. Making NGOs understand that gender is an important topic for all of us to discuss, that was a challenge there. That was the time when we brought in the whole concept of gender budgeting there. And I think the last 20-25 years or so, my team, I have around 15 members team. And out of 15, hardly 2 of us are men there. Rest of them are female. When I go in for a new recruitment, the maximum number of CVs that I get are from women there, or girls there. When I move out and move around in the corridor of this particular conclave, I see more women there compared to men. I see them more confident than men. I'm not saying for the sake of saying, I'm saying because I've seen the change that has happened in this particular sector. And this is something which is, I'll say, miniature of the world that we all come from. So if you go down, if you allow the woman to take a call there, whether what Rajshri was talking about on loan repayment or starting their own businesses or the kind of dream that I have and the kind of focused approach that girls and women at the communities are taking, they are, I'll say, way ahead than what it used to be earlier there. So somewhere what we need to do, and we have started doing this particular process of bringing women at the center of anything, everything that you do. The moment you do it, it becomes a lot more easier for you to plan out other things. For example, some of the numbers that I'm quoting, primarily I'm looking at the recent data. I'll talk about the organization that I'm working with. Out of 100 people that I support in my skilling, around 72% are girls. Out of 100 people that I support through digital literacy, around 66% of them are women and girls. out of, I'll say 100 tech solutions that I'm funding or investing in, I'll say 32, 33% of them are headed by women in that particular sense. And that is also changing. So every year, year on year, if you look at the number, that number is having an increasing trend there. What is needed is, I remember a debate that I got in year 2017 with one of the person whom I admire a lot, and she's sitting in this particular room when I was talking about that, hey, X number of women should get this scholarship, and she was like, you won't get that number, Anurag, in the engineering college. And I said that you will get it. Let's put a number there. And we agreed for 20% there. But we said that minimum 20% we'll have to do this. And we closed that particular project. We got close to 48%. The whole take was that you let it happen. Allow them, facilitate that particular thing, encourage that, and you will see the magic too, which will happen there. That's the only thing that we all need to do, and I don't agree with you, Nidhi. 268 years. I think in my own lifetime, I'll see a situation where you'll have more and more CSR heads being female there. You'll have more and more board directors being female there. You'll have more and more people who will be there in the decision-making table to take the calls there. And I'm 100% sure about this particular thing.
That was such encouraging words, and painted the future so bright. So really difficult to talk about challenges and gaps now. But it's been a pleasure to be here, and especially for talking about this subject, like Shobhini mentioned, it's close to most of our hearts. When we talk of, the gender inequality or the kind of challenges we face, I think there is enough being said about it, and there's consciousness amongst all sorts of stakeholders, be it policymakers or implementing agencies, in terms of the issues around involvement of women. But I think the gap lies in, having that access, involving them in mainstream discussion. So for example, at UBL, we do a lot of water conservation projects, which are very civil construction heavy. So if you were to primarily go by the subject or the nature of the project, one doesn't think of involving women in such kind of project. But then if you were to be conscious about it, to have them involved in the process, you start engaging them in the design phase. What do you think? Would a pond rejuvenation activity help you, or would something else help you in, what are your thoughts on water conservation, on rainwater harvesting? So one is the design phase, and then you also keep them involved in the entire duration, and when you give them hand-holding phase, when you exit from the project. We have seen that when we've involved women, right in the beginning and throughout the project, their ownership increases and the sustainability of the project is ensured. So it's being conscious about involving them and, having them part of the journey by design. The second, in terms of access, so, we think we added women empowerment as a separate thematic area, realizing that inclusivity and inclusion needs to be, again, by design. So I was just on another panel last week, and somebody mentioned that when you talk to underprivileged schools in Bangalore also, the students will probably tell you there that whatever you gave them, a book or a bag, is probably not of good quality, and they demand a specific brand, because that's the kind of access they have. They're spoiled by design. But the semi-urban, the rural areas still need, interventions. They have access issues. So probably, having a scholarship program that we design only for meritorious girl students in the semi-urban rural areas is another kind of initiative. We thought that is probably an access issue. So keeping consciousness in terms of design is, I think, the need of the hour in terms of both the challenge that is existing and how we are addressing it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's absolutely a pleasure and good evening to everyone. Been listening to the distinguished panelists, and a range of emotions are at this point going in my mind. And I'm thinking 20 years around back, I was a student and was studying gender partly. And I'm also thinking as a program person, perhaps I'm the only program person on the panel right now, so I'll take that privilege and advantage. And I think to summarize the thoughts in my mind, 20 years back, we were doing women in development from a theoretical standpoint. We did women and development. Then we did gender and development. Then we got on to equity. We're talking inclusion right now. So we sort of fully circumnavigated the whole issue, and the issue still continues to be, to a large extent, where it was. And I think the bottom line for it, from an experience of a practitioner, is that it is about access, and it is about agency. We know that a lot of the historical disadvantages that women have faced, the contexts have created that. Policy has tried to create equalitarian kind of space for it. What perhaps we need to do is to create that differentiated experience for them, create the circumstances to work differently for women to their advantage, so that it becomes an equitable playing field for them. Not trying to be alarmist here, but just taking forward, Shobhini, your statistics at the start from the World Economic Forum. I think around March this year, another very alarming statistics that came out of the gender parity index. And it placed India, sorry Anurag. And it placed India, unfortunately, 9th from the bottom of 146. Sure. Right. If anything, what that sort of guides us forward is to see where our agenda can be. And perhaps the agenda still lies in focusing on the 3 parameters: economic empowerment, educational attainment, health, and we were fairly miserable, sorry about that, we were the last. Health and survival, unfortunately, in India is the very last ranking position. We fared even worse than our neighbors there. And political empowerment. Now, this collectivizing strength is a conundrum in India, because here we've done very well. There are n number of studies that have happened in the country where of the women leaders, and they have tended to be in their positions for the longest time, and they haven't been able to be displaced. So when it comes to collectivizing agency of women, India has been very, very good at it. The silver lining, what is being suggested, is that in the HDI space, India's rate of declining inequality is perhaps the highest in the world. So Anurag, that's a very good news. I'm fully with you. The last thing I'd like to share here, we make the designs. United Way is in a bit of a unique position. I was sort of thinking about which program of ours we could possibly think. And we are to a certain extent cause agnostic, because we work in the dual capacities of both direct implementers, and we work with a lot of collaboratively with our partners. Some of them are here. So we've got some very good positive experiences coming from the ground in the space of education, where there is a fair amount of good ground that is being covered, especially keeping the girl child in mind, and what we can do in the STEM field. What are the advantages that we can extend? What can we do further to make it better for them and get their learning outcomes to be at the top? How do we rally the communities around it? What is the role of a mother in the community? A lot of our work is also in the area of nutrition. And therefore, to us, gender as a category perhaps is not standing out in focus, but we firmly believe that the woman is at the center of it all. if you even look at the model of the WCD, the ICDS, community work in the area of nutrition, you have a simple thing of Mata Samiti. And Mata Samiti, the whole idea is that the entire change, the dietary practices, the nutrition of the family, of course it's the care burden of the mother and the woman. Of course it's the care burden of the woman, but it also centralizes her position for any good outcomes that we wish to achieve. The last example I'd like to take, we have considerable work in agriculture space, natural resource management, and women are equal participants in agriculture. Perhaps 60 to 70% more than the men. Their day starts early, but the decision still doesn't lie in them. However, what is definitely benefiting them is the kind of policy attention that women are getting. The role of direct transfers, whatever be the limited gains, it is still a definite gain. It still enables the woman to go out, feel happy to be a part of all the farmer experiences they're doing, even though if it's the first time in their life. So I think that it's a mixed bag. At the end of the day, there is a program design and there is a program management. We need to continue to be at it. And there is really no substitute to the nuances and the granularity of work we can provide on the ground. At the end, we propose, the board disposes.
Thank you. This was quite an interesting discussion. So I'm going to try and react to a few things that I've heard. So I do agree, I think, with you, Prachi, that it is a mixed bag. And, there are silver linings and there are challenges. In fact, I'll go back to my 9-year-old daughter. We were at the passport office in the morning and I was, preparing some questions for the panel and thinking through, and she started reading my notes and she said, where is gender inequality? You go to work and you're earning money and, your father helps out in the house. I said, we are a minority. You don't see this everywhere. And I said, I can go to work and I can be out for several weeks in a month. It's because your father is at home and looking after you and the dogs. So I think the worldview really changes from context to context. And, whatever statistics we want to believe or not. So in fact, I was in rural Udaipur about 2 weeks ago, and it was very heartening to see about 100 women who had collected. Each of them were heads of their federations. So they had these women-led SHGs and federations, and each of them was, they came to the meeting, they were wearing their ghungat, but they were very voluble in terms of the issues. And the issues that they brought up were very different from what the men were talking about. So they talked about clean water, access to water, they talked about health and the diseases, they talked about the children's education. I didn't hear any of the men talk about any of these things. So, and we've got some research now that talks about 2-3 pieces. I think I want to just jump in here. Is we've long back, I think when India had changed the reservation at the panchayat level, and we had 1/3 reservation for women-headed panchayats. We've done some national experiments over the years, and we've seen the kind of decisions and that women take are very different from what men are taking. And those have impacted villages differently over a period of time, especially for villages which have now been, have seen reservations for, twice, thrice over by women. So they were difficult to dislodge from their positions for 2-3 years, 2 or 3 successive terms. So it's interesting to see that kind of change. And then if I talk about gender norms, that we have now evidence, and this is again at the adolescent level. So we've been looking at, there's an NGO called Breakthrough, which is looking at how do you how do you change norms and behaviors for adolescents, for both boys and girls? Because I agree, I think one of you said that boys have to be at the center of these conversations as well, boys and men. And we've seen that. We've seen that when we started out, some of the, looking at gender attitudes, women were more likely to be subservient and more likely to undermine themselves at the beginning of the study, more than boys. So that was actually startling for us as well to see. And this research was essentially looking at a series of interactive classrooms discussions which intended to change how, simple things like who helps out at chores at home. Would you let the girl go and buy something from the market or take a bus to the neighboring village. And these were the kind of discussions and case studies that were being done. And we conducted this experiment across 300 schools in Haryana, and we found at the end of the study, there were strong positive results. So boys and girls who participated in the program were more likely to show more progressive gender attitudes, which lasted up to more than 2 years after the program, which is interesting, I think, when you think about what the conversations are happening at the household level. We've also got some experiments that we've done where women are at the center of programs. There's an ultra-poor, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with what we call a graduation approach. It's been tried by BRAC in the USA. And then we evaluated it, and it's now across many states in India. NRLM is looking at it. State livelihood missions are looking at this. It's looking at giving women assets. Ultra-poor households headed by women, giving them assets and some financial business training to be able to manage that asset. And it's giving a shop, giving a sewing machine, livestock. These women, this program with some little bit of hand-holding to these women who are ultra-poor, not even eligible to be in any social security net. At the end of 2 years of this program, they were not only in a social security net, had savings, increased consumption. We saw positive effects for their families in terms of how just spillover effects for the families. They were more likely to stay out of poverty and within the social security net for up to 5 to 7 years afterwards. So these are powerful programs that we've seen work, but these are far and few between. It's not everywhere, and we are still struggling to get many states to adopt these programs. It's an asset-based program, and it's, again, a lot of political, I think, considerations to think about when we think about these. I'll move to the next set of questions, and I'm going to now switch gears to technology. We started late, I think. We started late. Okay, so quick question on technology. So I think this is both for you, Rajeshri and Nidhi. You can tell me a little bit more about, how can we best leverage ICT and to empower women and girls in India? What role can CSR play in unlocking the potential of technology to support women? Just any models that you have of women-centric development with respect to this would be great to hear. And I think 3 to 4 minutes would be great.
For change to happen, we need to look at it 3 different ways, right? One is societal changes. Second is government interventions. And as well as, of course, the corporates and the work where they come to, all these places. The adoption of technology in all these places can make a huge difference. For example, the societal changes. Let's give an example. We've seen recent past, how the communication or the behavioral change messages leverage social media or any of the information technology so well. I mean, somebody showed me how the ads in India have evolved over the last 40 years. It was shocking to see, what type of a behavioral pattern that, was visible in those ads and in the recent ones. Of course, sometimes some people also argue that we are going overboard in the name of inclusion, in the term of diversity, like that. But it's okay, because at least breaking stereotype, if it's possible, definitely information technology can play a role there. Okay, let me give an example from our own projects, which we are doing for the mother and child care with Harmon. Here, it's not a big technology, no social media, no metaverse, nothing like that. It's simple voice messages, which are delivered to pregnant women at the prenatal stage. And they can actually choose when they want to receive the messages, to just tell them that what type of eating behavior is important, what type of food they need to take, and the folic acid and iron is important, and then these you can get it from your own local sources. And now these messages are not only received by the, the pregnant women, but also the mother-in-laws, because it's equally important, and the, father and husband and so on. Because we know that women, they have to deliver healthy, they have to eat healthy, but then they get the last share of the meal in the day. So such places, the information technology, simple technologies, voice messages make a huge change. So that is from a societal change perspective. The government, definitely can adopt technology in a big way. And more Wi-Fi bandwidth. It's not about just ICT. I would say that even there are interconnected cars and interconnected transport system can actually play a huge role on the security of the women, and they can walk out more in the late hours even for the work. So that again, from the government interventions, that technology can play a big role. In fact, there is one statistics that women participation in labor force is much higher in countries which has a good public transport system. Okay, so how a secure public transport system, interconnected technology can play a role there. And finally, coming into the corporate world, how technology can play a role, I can talk about my personal experience. I still remember not these smartphones, our phones used to be those Nokia's, favorite phones. Of course, it had a very good signal. But then when the BlackBerry came the first time it was also introduced and rolled out, we felt we were suddenly liberated because we can take calls from home, and it made a huge difference. That was the first time that we saw technology at people's hand that, of course, the mute button was even more a bigger innovation in the BlackBerry phones. But still, like the technology played a huge role there. And today, work from home is possible, and at least for the ICT, but I feel sometimes we are talking from a, platform of privilege. We want this to actually happen in all these sectors. It's not just, of course, the banking and others. And not just about gender. Like even persons with disability, we saw, they're getting more included into workforce actually during the pandemic period because, the work from home was a reality and it made it easier for them to work from home. It became easier for them to work. So it made a huge difference. But what is still disturbing, as I said, that when the recovery happened, it's not the same across the sectors. Why from 2005 to the 2020, 26% decrease in the women participation? That is still something we have to ponder. Because working from home is not a possibility in all these sectors. So we need to understand, like how technology can play a role there. I think we still need to have that gender-based design there. A lot of companies are talking about nearshores. They invest on the technology infrastructure so that if at all they're not able to work, at least a nearshore.
I think in the interest of time, I'll just probably take a minute. In the interest of time, I'll only take a minute. We all, agree, I think, that technology is a catalyst, is an enabler. I think, and I will talk more in terms of just where the masses are, which is the rural India, the Bharat. And, since you spoke about ICT, I think what's most important is access. So what technology really helps is in access. And while we may have hundreds of solutions and hundreds of platforms and everything, what they need is access. And that comes with the basic thing of making people, especially with a focus on women, digitally literate. And so I think the biggest thing of technology is providing access, which further helps them to link to government schemes, everything. So what we really need is a little bit more effort, strength in terms of providing access at the last mile. And, while at NASCOM Foundation, we are doing a lot of that, but I feel that I'll just add to that there are so many solutions. We just need to all of us need to come together to make sure that whatever we are doing, we are able to help provide that access through technology at the last mile. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I won't respond to any of what you've said, but I think in the interest of time, I want to move on to the other panelists. So I'm going to again switch gears. This is almost like a rapid fire round now. From technology, I'm switching to data and evidence and measurement. And I know we've had some conversations prior to this. Just wanted to talk about the importance of data and the evidence in the context of gender. And, it would be great if you could elaborate amongst the work that you're supporting. How have you thought about measuring some of these nebulous and difficult to measure constructs? Because these are difficult. It depends on how you're thinking of moving the needle. And how is the needle moving for you when you're thinking about impact and data of the work that you're doing?
Who should be answering this question?
Okay. So this is, special one for Anurag. So Janie and Prachi.
So in the interest of time, again, I'll keep it short. When you design a project and by the structure of it, so what we have tried to do is, when we do need assessment, we have very structured question. Like you said, it's very qualitative. It's very difficult to measure women empowerment, right? So what we try to probably put questions around is, are they the decision makers? Have their decision making in households improved? Their access to education, their access to healthcare, their access to financial independence. So these are the kind of questions around which we try to define, and give a more objective evaluation of whether our empowerment has, really we've been successful in empowering them, and it's a continuous process. So, our engagements or projects are usually around three years, but every 6 months through formal engagement, through in-depth interviews, through partner engagements is what we try to, keep the dialogue on, to receive feedback and keep, improvising accordingly. So that would be the brief answer to the evidence-based decision-making that we try to do, in our projects, keeping women at the center.
Thank you. I'll keep it quick and short. I think data and evidence is very important for us because intrinsically it's the core component of how the direction of the project will be, especially after the pilot is done. So our approach pretty much follows both quantitative and qualitative research data that we like to gather. Quantitative data for us is tabulated, it is easier to sort of grasp, quantify it, pretty much as part of our output matrix that gets reported out in our CSR reports. For the qualitative part of it, it's the deeper engagement. It's the sit-down sessions with the groups of women that we are working with the community. I think what we like to focus on is what we call as gender indicators. And in that, we are following the global standard indicators. We usually like to follow the OECD. And we map that to the context of our program geographies. And essentially from there on, it's a lot of storytelling. It's a lot of participatory research. It's about people in the community defining how and what their experiences are. How do they understand the program? How do they want to sort of move forward on the direction of it? All of these is essentially to bring out three agencies of the project. One is to understand from a gender indicator standpoint, what is the capacity building of the woman at the center, which is the intrinsic agency of the woman. The second is the instrumental agency of the woman, which is essentially what is the kind of control that she is able to exercise, what's the kind of asset division that is there, how is the decisioning really happening in the family. And there are various ways in which this can be figured out. Not all of it we do, but some of it is aspirational. And as an organization, we consider ourselves more as implementers than as researchers. So we are sort of open to newer domains of knowledge being shared with us, but primarily we're looking at, how are women themselves describing their situation. We use it highly internally to advance our program directions. And every year and a half or so, we do run a third-party impact assessment. So, this is how we are broadly capturing it. Given the fact that a lot of our projects are within the CSR domain, we are sort of contoured within what the funding is available for it. The rest of it is our own project work.
Thank you. That's I'd love to see that. I think coming from the impact space, I'd love to see some of what all of you are doing in this. Just to make a plug, we've got a JPAL now over the years. We've done quite a few experiments in the space of gender. So we've got this. It's a free guide. It's on our website to measuring impact, to measuring women's empowerment. We've got a lot of tools, guides, constructs, trainings, all of that. So it's a free resource on the website. So please take a look when you're looking at impact assessments. Happy to share that as well. And we do trainings around that as well. Okay, so Anurag, I'm saving the last question for you. Now think carefully before you answer. This is it's a loaded question. It's a two-in-one here. Can you talk about how we can come together to build a culture of change in the space of women-centric development? Okay, how can we build institutions that support women-centered development? How can NGOs and implementers working in this space come together to support each other? So that's part one. And you can talk about the role of CSR initiatives playing to encourage this. The second one, related to this, is given that programs to support women-centric development might take years to show results, can you talk about the importance of multi-year engagements by CSRs and donors?
Okay. No, are they loaded? No, and they're
Well,
not.
you have a lot of, there are a lot of NGOs sitting here.
They're not. They're not.
So far, we have, I've been hearing this refrain the last 2 days. I know CSRs only support us annually, from 1 year to the other. And
They're
how do
going
we
to the wrong
move
people.
forward from there?
They're going to the wrong people.
Okay, so go catch Anurag after this.
They're going to the wrong people. Then there are 2-3 dimensions to the question that you've asked. This is 20 seconds that you have given me, 18 seconds. That is making me conscious now. Okay. The 2 minutes? Thank you. God bless you. One is that please understand that development is not 2-minute noodles that you will kholo, dalo, pakao, khalo. So you need to have patience there, then only you can see the real fruit of change that you are really wishing for, anticipating for, or aspiring for will happen. That's one. Second is, हिंदुस्तान अजीब है. I was talking to Nidhi yesterday एक और मीटिंग के अंदर में. This is one country जहाँ पे if we collate all the numbers given by all the NGOs and all the CSR and all the foundations and all the companies of the excellent work that we have done in the last 20 years or so, India will be far better than US and Canada and UK and France and all the developed economies there. Because हम लोगों ने सब कुछ अच्छा बता दिया हर रिपोर्ट के अंदर में. ठीक है, 2 मिलियन, 5 मिलियन, 8 मिलियन, 10 मिलियन. We are throwing numbers as if कि नंबर ऐसे रिटेल में बिक रहे हैं. That's one side of it. The second side of it, if you look into the sob stories, जो रोने वाली स्टोरी नहीं होती है कि बहुत दुख है जी, बहुत दुख है जी, बहुत तकलीफ है जी, बहुत तकलीफ है जी, ये भी नहीं हुआ, वो भी नहीं हुआ. If we start comparing it, compiling it, consolidating it, India will be at, I'll say, पाताल लोक के अंदर चला जाएगा. Because there is कोई इंडिकेटर नहीं है. Because हर जगह we are रो रहे हैं अपन कि and we are quoting the study report, which I am surprised. You are sitting, you handle JPAL. 3000 का इन इंडिया की जगह के अंदर में सैंपल साइज लेकर आप बात करते हो कि इंडिया का किधर पे इंडेक्स चला गया. Somewhere we need to apply to challenge some of these studies to say that. And I'm like, whether it's NASCOM, Cognizant, JPAL, United Way, they should come out with their own study to say that, hey boss, there is some problem with your methodologies there. That's one. Second is, problem with NGOs is, and collaboration is a good topic to discuss. वो टेक्स्ट बुक में अच्छा दिखता है. We don't want to collaborate. हमारे we somewhere एक 5 NGOs को एक जगह बैठा दोगे और 5 कॉर्पोरेट को एक जगह बैठा दोगे, ये 5-10 एक दूसरे के साथ सर फोड़ के बाहर निकलेंगे. They will never be able to come to one single point to say that हाँ ये common minimum program है, let's work on this particular thing. Because everyone feels that मेरा strategy सबसे अच्छा है, आपकी strategy खराब है, मेरी strategy सबसे अच्छी है. And that happens with corporate also. I'm not at all taking corporate out. I always use the word logos and egos have spoiled this collaboration space completely. We don't wish to. We just don't want to. Because there is so much of bloated egos that is floating around. 2 रुपए का काम नहीं किया, 50,000 का काम बताएंगे कि ये कर लिया अपन ने. And that is not happening with us. Corporate के अंदर में, NGOs में वही बीमारी है, corporate में वही बीमारी है, and no one is trusting each other. So there is a huge amount of trust deficit also. Corporate will not trust NGOs, NGOs will not trust corporate, both of them will not trust government is not going to trust either of them. ठीक है. And हम लोग यहाँ पे बैठेंगे, हर बार की मीटिंग के अंदर में वो कोलैबोरेशन एक एजेंडा आता है, अंत में ये होता है कि वो सिफर सब आप एकला चलो रे, हम अपनी ज़मीन, अपना खेती, अपना काटेंगे, अपना खुश रहेंगे, भले 2 रुपए की कमाएंगे, उतने में खुश रहेंगे, किसी और का लेना नहीं, किसी और का देना नहीं. ठीक है, क्योंकि 25 को रिपोर्ट क्यों करें. That's the problem with this particular sector. And I've lost my hair, but I've reached out to many people saying, इन कॉर्पोरेट के अंदर में मेरा लोगो राइट में आएगा, मेरा लोगो लेफ्ट में आएगा, मेरा लीडर पहले बोलेगा, आपका बंदा वोट ऑफ थैंक्स देगा, मैं वेलकम स्पीच देगा. You can't do the whole operation in that particular sense. That's one. दूसरा सवाल था कि how you bring in the whole gender picture in the budgeting. That's what.
So, I mean, how do you create multi-year NGOs multi-year? This is, like you said, it takes a
I was again मैं बाहर में कॉफी शॉप में बैठ के बात कर रहा था. This is the problem with the CSR heads of today. You do not have strong CSR heads sitting there who can bring in a huge amount of credibility there at the CSR board to say that what I am proposing is correct. You have CSR head जिसको कम्युनिकेशन से हटा के इधर डाल दिया, ब्रांडिंग से हटा के इधर डाल दिया, एचआर से हटा के इधर डाल दिया, किसी और प्रोजेक्ट से उठा के इधर डाल दिया. इट्स लाइक लास्ट रिजॉर्ट कि ये तो कर ही लेगा, कुछ नहीं कर रहा तो एटलीस्ट ये तो कर ही लेगा. And then do you expect that individual to go to the board to convince them saying that, hey, this is a strong proposal that I have? They'll say, yeah, I know. तुम क्या हो? This is, जब तक ये खत्म नहीं होता है ना, for example, मैं अपना लेके चलता हूँ. I am not at all talking about myself in that particular sense, but I spent 2 good years in making people believe that boss CSR can be a good tool for you to bring in good feel about your company. Because this is one tool that will make you feel happy about it. And there are some of the partners who are sitting in this particular room also, and they'll vouch for this particular thing. I took my leaders also to those places there. They realized that what I'm talking is making some sense there. Then they started accepting. None of my proposals are one-year proposals. I don't fund one-year proposals because I strongly believe that they are as good as burning your cash there somewhere else. कुछ नहीं होता 1 साल के अंदर में. There is nothing. 3 महीने लगता है प्रोजेक्ट शुरू करने में, 3 महीने लगता है प्रोजेक्ट को थोड़ा सा स्पीड देने में, और उसके 6 महीने के बाद में बोलते हो कि नया फंडर लेकर आओ. किधर से एनजीओ काम करेगा? You allow them, and most of my NGOs are 6-year, 7-year-old with us. They are working, and I am not the only one. There are saner souls in this particular side of the work also, and they are doing sizable, interesting work there. Multi-year funding, multi-year commitments which are there. Reach out to those people. मैं हमेशा बोलता हूँ कि जो हमारे घर में कहा गया कि हमारे बड़े बुजुर्ग कहते थे कि 2 ही कपड़ा लो लेकिन अच्छा लो. 2 शर्ट पैंट ही खरीदना लेकिन अच्छे कंपनी का लो, अच्छा पैसा खर्चा करो, उसमें मजे में रहो. 2 ही फंडर लो, अच्छा लो. 2 ही कॉर्पोरेट के साथ में काम करो, अच्छे वाले के साथ में काम करो. Who is going to help you grow? Don't get a funder who is going to drive you crazy. That's the only advice that I'll give it to you. I am bad. मैं इस सवाल पे, people who have heard me, they know that I am bad in this particular side. I've been in both the side, and I know कि दर्द कहाँ पे है. And I always tell people that have humility. आज मैं इधर बैठा हूँ, कल मैं उधर बैठूंगा, कल जो उधर बैठे हैं वो इधर बैठेंगे. दुनिया बड़ी छोटी है, ये सेक्टर बहुत छोटा है.
Thanks, Anurag.